Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today where we talk about the virtualization skill set. I'm thrilled to have both Mike and Natasha from ExpoCast here with us, and they're going to introduce themselves in a minute. Previously, we interviewed Joseph McCool, who has been doing executive search and recruiting and talent management for 30 years. And we talked to him about the skill sets that are now being very obviously sought after in corporations and commerce around the world because of the pandemic and also because of trends in the economy. Today, we're going to talk about where to find that talent. And that's why I'm really excited to bring both Mike and Natasha here today for some questions. They specialize in the search for talent within the events industry. And I'll argue that the events industry is probably one of the best places to find this talent because of the online marketing, the online skills, the project management, and the event experience. So with that, I'd like to have you both introduce yourselves. Natasha, can you go first?
Hi, thanks, RD. Yes, thanks for having us. So I've been in recruitment now for just over 15 years. I actually studied events management at university, fell straight into recruitment, and then did a 360 and ended back in events doing recruitment for the events industry. Mike and I'll let him introduce himself, obviously, but we launched ExpoCast last March, the first week going into the pandemic. So it's been an interesting journey for us. Nonetheless, it's been it's been a good journey for us, actually, and lots of positives have come out of it, which is great. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. Mike?
Thanks, RD. Thanks, Natasha. So, I've fewer years in recruitment than Natasha. I actually started without really realizing in the events industry on the performer side. I actually come from a musical background, and then 5 years ago joined the same firm as Natasha in exhibitions recruitment. Most of my experience has focused on roles on a global level, usually more at the senior end, but both of us have touched on everything from sort of sales execs up to CEO. And it's I think it's a similar story. You know, we landed in exhibitions and we never want to leave. So yeah, we ended up launching ExpoCast last year, and in the face of a pandemic, no less. And just despite everything that's happened, still here, still going strong, and sort of trying to play our part in helping the industry recover as strongly as it can.
Great. Excellent. Well, really happy to have you both here. So the subject is the virtualization skill set, the growing virtualization skill set of talent in corporations and organizations around the world, and your particular experience with that talent skill set in the events industry. So let me just start with a few questions, and you guys can take them as you see fit. What seems to be the overall attitude in the events industry regarding the adoption of the virtual skills and products?
So I think it's been quite a natural progression. You know, the virtualization subject has been ongoing since before the pandemic hit. You know, it's not brand new, and I think depending on, you know, we speak to clients all the time, obviously, and there are varying degrees of, you know, how much they'd already incorporated these things prior to the pandemic hitting. I spoke to a US organizer the other day, and they sort of pretty much said, well, you know, we were already doing it. It's more about, for them, they have potentially obviously had to put more focus onto it. So I think the quality of a lot of this content that's going out on the virtual side has improved. Whereas others have increased the quantity, hopefully the quality too. So I think in terms of the overall attitude, it's positive. I think the understanding is there that it is of a massive benefit. You know, that there will definitely be, I would say, a minority who are clinging to dear life to the live only side of things. We'll see how that all washes out over the next few years, but certainly I think, you know, the smart companies out there are adopting it, incorporating it into what they were already doing, if they haven't already, and making the best of it. I think there's still a question mark about how it could be commercialized to the same level and with the same margins that we've seen on for physical shows. But again, there have been companies doing purely virtual events for over a decade now who make very good margins. So I think there's still a learning to do, but the willingness is definitely there from the industry.
Excellent, great. Do you feel that the talent, the existing talent within the events industry has the capacity and capability to upskill, or does the industry need to look at other sectors for the virtualization skill set?
I think the ambiguous answer to that is probably both, to be honest. I think we've got some incredible individuals and skills within our industry. You mentioned earlier about the project management, the marketing, the sales. We really do bring in the full package there. And the feel is that everybody has really taken on board to upskill themselves on the virtual side. They've been really positive, really proactive to upskill themselves so that when things, as companies are already adopting that virtualization part of their events, that they are ready to do that and be a part of it. So yeah, there's definitely capacity there, and the mindset and the skill set is there. But I do think I think we've always needed to open up our doors a little bit more to people outside the events industry, to be honest. We could really benefit from getting some fresh ideas, a different point of view, and looking at the description. The chief virtualization officer description has been put together. Clearly, we are going to have to look outside of the industry to really be able to get those skills, combine those skills together. So a bit of both probably is the answer to that question.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad you brought up the chief virtualization skill set job description. We've created that to start this dialogue of what these skill sets actually are. And it sounds like a lot of these do exist in the industry. But to flip that question, given the opinion that event professionals have a lot of these skills already and the determination and ability to learn them, because that's what they've been doing their whole career, should the events industry be looked at by other sectors as a source for talent regarding this virtualization skill set trend?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Without wanting to be looked at as a traitor to the events industry, we've seen a horrendous number of redundancies over the last year, and I think it's only right that the events, those events professionals who have found themselves out of work, we can help as best as possible to guide them into every direction that makes sense for them. So, the events industry has struggled, I think, to retain some of the best talent anyway, even before the pandemic. I think there have been other sectors that have tempted people away, whether it is just because they pay more or for other reasons. So certainly, the dedication, the work ethic, the desire to constantly improve ourselves, event professionals have all of those, and they should really be of interest to other sectors. Specifically regarding virtualization, again, you mentioned the project management, the digital marketing. We're always adapting. I think these skill sets really do cross over into a number of sectors. So it's another thing that's kind of come out across the pandemic is that actually I think the event sector can often be overlooked. So yes, whilst the talent is definitely here for other sectors to look at, they might not necessarily notice us, if that makes sense. So again, I don't want to betray the sector that I love so much, but I think for the good of people who are looking for work, if there is a way that we can promote the events industry to other sectors and the professionals within it who are out of jobs at the moment, then that's definitely something we should be doing.
Well, I'm imagining there's a bit of an ebb and a flow between the corporate and organizational level and the events industry. I think it seems like the events industry has drawn for years from digital marketing and from other sectors as well. So do you see an impact if suddenly corporations are drawing upon this? I mean, I think they were already, because more events, by far, exponentially more events are done by corporations than by the events industry itself. So they've been drawing on it and giving to it. But is there an impact here, or is it positive, negative?
Shall I let you answer that one, Natasha?
Yeah, sorry. I totally missed that question. I'm so sorry. I thought that was your turn, Mike. Could we repeat that one, RD?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
no
you.
worries. Is there a positive or a negative effect if the events industry is drawn upon for these skill sets? If corporations need these skill sets within the marketing departments now, because they need the event skill sets, they need the virtualization skill sets, they need to engage their own customers in a virtual way. Is there a negative, positive, or is there an ebb and flow to the events industry itself?
Well, I guess the negative is that we're at risk of losing some incredible talent in our industry, and I think that raises a larger topic around how can we retain our talent, and are we doing the best we can as employers to, retain and look after our staff. But on the flip side, it's a positive because being within the events industry and having those transferable skills opens up a lot of doors and opportunities that you might not have otherwise. So again, there is the negative and positive side, and it's just really making sure that we are attracting good talent and retaining that talent, and making sure we are aware of our competitors and what other sectors are offering. Are we competitive with our salaries? Are we competitive with our benefits that we're offering, pension schemes? Are we making sure we are, I know we might touch on this, but we're making sure we're looking at what the new generation wants, that sustainability focus, the diversity focus. There's a lot of things employers need to be thinking about to make sure we keep our talent in our industry.
Great. It sounds like it's not an and or there's this cross-pollination possibility and possibly even partnerships that could strike up, and there's talent going back both ways. I would think no matter what, and you guys are in the search profession in this industry, that it's going to be good for the career set of the individuals themselves. Salaries will increase with the demand for these skill sets. So this job description for a chief virtualization officer was created to make the point that a position reporting directly to the decision maker within the corporation should be established with these virtualization skill sets in mind, so that things like board meetings and customer interactions and all the different ways that virtualization can add productivity and benefit into a corporation. So we created this job description to make that point. Are there particular features of that job description that you see as most crucial and relevant in the events industry specifically?
Again, it's a tough one. It's not a black and white answer, because as you'll be aware, events businesses are very much unique. There are so many different variables. I think one of the things I noticed in the job description is it's got to be a customer centric analysis, around what needs to change, what skills need to be added, what needs to be looked at in terms of potential. So I recall watching the interview with Joseph that this person needs to be unbiased. This is why it's a new position. It's not just you can't just lump these responsibilities on someone else who's already in that senior management team, because it needs to look overall at the business, and somebody might lose out, somebody might gain, and it all needs to be with the customer at heart. So in terms of any parts that are particularly crucial for the events industry, it's going to depend on each individual company. It might depend on their size, it might depend on the region that they're covering, whether or not they're just running domestic shows, international shows. So it's a little bit of a tricky question to answer, but I think that again kind of proves why it's such an important position actually to bring in, is that there's not going to be any one size fits all response on how to bring in the right virtualization or the right virtual skill set for an events business. It's got to be done on a one-on-one basis across each company, almost a virtual audit, I would say, to see how that particular business can be improved. You know, what one might benefit more from a marketing perspective, being a sole focus. One might benefit more from your sales team being far more solutions led rather than just sort of selling real estate, as we say. So, apologies, it's a bit of a non-answer, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But
No.
it's still an important point to make.
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially the idea of an audit, somebody responsible for sort of searching the organization for opportunities where the virtualization skill set can really add value in the case of continual customer interaction and sales to productivity, which we're seeing. I like to give the example, my wife's works for the nonprofit Habitat for Humanity as a financial director, and they've been running the board meetings virtually. That means that she's not driving in 50 miles for them, and people aren't stuck in traffic. And I joke sometimes too that, I mean, I actually flew to Las Vegas to go to lunch once for a meeting. I now have 10 to 15 meetings, meaningful meetings a day. I've never been so much productive in my life. Now, I miss live events, but the events industry has this sort of skill set to be able to facilitate these kind of things and really add productivity into the organization. To that point, Natasha, what particular skill sets do you think need upskilling? You know, are there certain areas you think that people should be aware of that companies and organizations and the event industry are looking for improvement on?
Yeah, I think the first thing you think of is obviously the digital, the technical side of these roles. And yes, it goes without saying that the marketing side of it, we already had the digital marketing, but that is completely changed. It's increased. Then you've got the operational side of it. And the actual production teams, which is we've already got it, but it's very, very different. It's about doing it in a different way. But I think let's not forget the disciplines like sales that you think might be more transferable, that they've really got to understand the virtualization part of the work, because they have to sell it to the clients and their customers. And I think that's really important, because if you don't understand it, you're not going to be attracting the right client base. So I do think, you know, there's a level of all discipline areas that need upskilling, if not so to understand what their colleagues are going through and how it affects. Everything has such a knock-on effect in every discipline area. And the communication lines, they often joke about that lack of communication between sales and marketing. You know, they really need to be on that upskilling journey together to appreciate what each other are trying to achieve and actually get out of the business. So I think every area has that element of upskilling to be required.
I agree. I am a little biased because marketing is in my DNA. And I think we are in a new shift in marketing. I think, you know, from the early days, we had direct marketing, one-to-one marketing, then there was social media marketing and inbound marketing, thanks to groups like HubSpot. But now I really think we're in a shift towards building community and wanting to engage your customers, your audience, your corporation in a sustainable community. And I always think of the pillars that make up a community, and live events are certainly one of them. Yeah, I think Intuit's QuickBooks is a great example. I used to have run a show in the accounting space, and they have an amazing community, and they're having an amazing event in San Jose. And people feel really part of that. I think another example in a really extreme way is Salesforce's Dreamforce, which in itself is a whole product. It's a very profitable product, but it's really exists to promote the Salesforce ecosystem. So it's corporations, it's nonprofits, it's association, but this great marketing shift that we're going through right now, I think is a movement towards creating a customer communities and company communities. Along those lines, I think sort of this marketing skill set, the 8.5 million marketers around the world that are really engaged in these types of activities, be it internal corporate communications or marketing, bring a lot of that function to the table. So the events industry that you guys work in every day, it certainly has a lot of strengths there to draw on. On the last question, I hit a little bit on it when I mentioned the flight to Las Vegas for lunch. sustainability. So it certainly was already a major component of focus in the events industry. And the events industry, frankly, has a lot to improve on in sustainability. Well, how do you think the virtualization skill set plays into this? Any sort of thoughts on the future in that area?
I think Mike and I have been talking about this recently, actually. But in terms of the sustainability has always been a really hot topic, as it should be. And I think when the pandemic hit, perhaps it wasn't at the forefront of everybody's minds all of a sudden. But I'm really pleased to say that those conversations are coming back. And again, what I talked about earlier about what have employers got to offer, and people will be looking at that and thinking, how are you helping global warming? What are you doing for the environment? What does your company offer? And it's part of that package that is attractive to candidates. So for us, we always, it's big for us in recruitment, because we need to be selling that to our candidates and making sure that our clients are being really sustainable. But of course, when you look at our industry, as you say, traveling to, was it Las Vegas, you said, for a lunch,
From the East Coast.
Yeah, I mean, this industry is global, and that's part of why everyone loves what they do, because they get the opportunity to travel. And, every show that comes on, whether that be in Europe or the US or wherever, that's the perk, isn't it, of doing the job, because they get to go there and they get to be on the event, at the event, and do that travel part. So I think that's going to be, I'm not sure if you can ever take that away, but there is that element of getting the balance from perhaps the remote working, so this reducing carbon footprint. If we can get that balance of, okay, well, we still want to attend our shows, we still need to be at the face of the business in other countries, but okay, let's do some more remote working from home, and let's reduce our carbon footprint in these areas, but we still get to do the things that we love and what we feel is a big part of our industry and our jobs. So but it's a topic that has been hot from the beginning, and it has to improve. And I think this time out, everyone's been incredibly busy, but these last 12 months has been a big wake-up call for companies to think about what their true values are, what we need to be doing differently. They've been restructuring businesses, restructuring teams, and now's the time to make sure that they are restructuring what they're doing for sustainability as well. And I think a lot of people are thinking about this at the moment.
Yeah, totally agree. When I was at Diversified, we had summer town hall meetings with all employees, and I remember we had a lot of the millennial employees, the rising talent in the organization on stage. And I remember one person's comment when they asked, like, why do you work in this industry? And they liked it because of the constant creation nature of it, that you start with nothing, you build up this incredible demand for an event, you build the event, you break down the event, and then you start all over again. So I think there's some sustainability when you tie in the idea of community here, that there's things going all year long. The other point about sustainability is that it's talent is going to vote with who they work for, and the talent that both the event industry wants and corporations want with this virtualization skill set, they now more and more will pick that. So I'm going to throw you a little bit of curveball. We didn't put this on the agenda, but diversity also is a huge area of focus now for corporations and organizations all around the world. How about the events industry in that area as companies look to diversify because they are so global? You see a source of diverse talent?
Yeah, I'm pleased you added on, because we obviously saw the agenda before this as well, and we were sort of determined to kind of bring this subject matter up as well, because it's really important. And when, as the world has almost sort of stopped, as it were, for the last 12 months, it's I think one of the positive things that has come out is the fact that this topic of diversity has risen again to the top of people's agenda, and it's stayed there. Whereas, it's come up in years past, and people have drifted away from it. Whereas I think this time around, from what we're seeing, it's remained something that people want to address. And I'm talking on a panel next week, I think, regarding specifically gender balance within boardrooms and leadership within the events industry. So there are obviously all sorts of different facets to this, but it's super important. I think it is a question that candidates will ask more and more of companies whilst they are interviewing. I think interviews are evolving to being far more of a two-way street than they have been previously. It's very much a chance for candidates to assess whether or not a business is worthy of them joining, rather than just a company assessing whether or not a candidate is the right fit for their vacancy. And we're all individuals. We will all have different values and put different priorities on those. But more and more, I think diversity is going to be a real key issue for candidates in what companies they're willing to work with. And it's not just going to be, whether they've got a D&I policy or, about the ratios of their boardroom. It's going to be about, day-to-day policies, how it works within the business. What are they doing to attract diverse talent? How do they retain them? How do they treat them? It's how do they manage when somebody doesn't treat somebody correctly? We don't want to see anything being swept under the rug. It needs to be addressed publicly and properly. So tying that into virtualization, again, communication has never been easier. We had the dawn of the internet at the end of last century, and that obviously made the world a much smaller place. I think the shift change that's happened to business over the last year has made the world even smaller. Everybody's been driven online so much more that these conversations, they're now a daily thing. People are exchanging information about how companies and individuals are addressing these issues, and it's got to be something that people are taking really seriously. I think we talk about the chief virtualization officer. I think just as important is going to be a chief D&I officer as well, someone to come in and make sure on a continuous basis that this is something that's being addressed in every business.
Great points. Yeah. I think if you look at sort of the events industry and the events they put on globally, they're very diverse because they're natural marketplaces coming together for buyer and seller to meet and learn. So great, a great example. If that's the community for the events industry, that's one of their pillars, and they expand that more globally and also more 365 days a year, that's naturally gonna lend itself towards having a more diverse company that serves that. If this virtualization skill set is coming out of the events industry more and more, that could be a great pathway for that. Natasha, you hit on the remote trend. We're all working from home. Some companies have gone back to hybrid environments. We don't know what the future looks like. Talk to me about sort of the candidates and what you're hearing from them about the flexibility of working from home, office, what you think the future of work in the events industry will look like, and how that relates to virtualization skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually been very surprised how much the remote from working remotely from home has come up recently, actually, because that candidates are adamant. They're adamant that they want to work from home now, and I can see why. If they're doing very well and they've had a successful time working remotely, then there should be no reason why they can't. There's obviously that argument between it's nothing quite like being face to face, working with your team, that sense of the morale that you get, especially within perhaps a sales environment. You can pick up momentum together and encourage each other. So, that obviously working with other people face to face is fantastic. But we have proven that we can work very well remotely. And going back to the diversity thing as well, if people from all over the country, from all over the world can remotely work, then that's going to encourage and bringing that diversity that we need into the industry even more so. So there's that huge link and connect. But I think employers are going to have to be very aware and mindful that this remote working is not temporary, and that it is something that is expected, or at least some remote working. I've spoken to clients recently who are adamant their teams are coming back into the office. Remote working doesn't work for them. And then I've spoken to other clients who have said, we're happy for that person to maybe pop into the office once a month. It works with our sustainability, strategic plans, what we're doing. It works for our diversity. It works for our teams. It means they get a better home-life balance. So there's a mix out there, but from the candidate's point of view, which was your question, RD, is that there is a high level of expectation to be able to work from home remotely on a permanent basis.
That's exactly what I'm seeing too. And I really think when that question comes back and that company is adamant about employees coming back, they will lose talent because of that. I've already heard it. I've already seen it.
Yeah.
CEOs need to wake up to it. They are not in charge of the talent they get to bring into the company. It's the talent that's in charge. And I think we're in for a real boom, actually, in talent acquisition. You know, we talked, what has it been, 15 years ago now, about the war for talent. It's raged on for top talent. It's never really gone away. But when all markets do start to open back up, along with the things that have developed, there's going to be a real raging war for the type of talents that you place in these virtualization skill sets. To that point, and again, it wasn't on the agenda, but I want to ask one last question here around the tool sets that have developed, because a lot of the unicorns lately have been coming out of the events industry, right? A lot of these virtual event platforms and virtualization platforms have gotten multi-billion-dollar valuations, and they're going to be investing that money because that's what they need to do. They're going to be grabbing market share and they're going to be grabbing mind share. What are your thoughts on sort of these tools coming out? I mean, there were some going into it. I don't want to name any specifically, but are you seeing that too? Are you seeing sort of innovation around the tool set?
It's an interesting one, actually. I think for the last 12 months, there has been, you know, this almost initially a knee-jerk reaction from the industry to sort of figure out, you know, which is the best platform, which one should I use? And I think that the dust has sort of slowly been settling. No one's really kind of wanted to put their neck on the line and sort of say, this is the one you should use. You know, I think it's too much of a unique thing. You know, again, it all depends about being customer focused, and you know, what does your customer base actually want from your online offering? Is it is it a replica of a trade show, or is it something a bit more personal? So you know, different platforms offer different things. I mean, these valuations are amazing, and you're right. You know, there's going to be a real talent grab in terms of, you know, they're going to have these massive budgets. I think, as much as I hate to say it, they're unlikely to necessarily come through the likes of third-party recruiters such as us. You know, they're going to invest some of that budget into developing, you know, real world-class talent acquisition teams within their own businesses to find people. And I think we will see a lot of talent switch from physical events businesses across to some of these platforms, because, you know, certainly from a sales perspective, they're going to want someone coming along on board with a little black book full of contacts and potential clients. But, you know, I mean, prior to the pandemic and these sort of new tech platforms coming out, there was a lot of investment happening within the events industry. You know, we saw some massive acquisition deals. We saw a lot of private equity coming into the industry. I don't see that slowing down. I think we'll see some consolidation in terms of event organizers. You know, we might see some names disappear and get swallowed up by some of the larger businesses. I think there'll be some people who, some independent show organizers will reach a point where they might need to sell up and they weren't necessarily planning to. And likewise, we might see that from a tech perspective. I think we might see some of the bigger platforms trying to incorporate some of the smaller ones. So we'll see some busy acquisition periods, I think, over the next few years. Because obviously that's another way to grow, isn't it? So yeah. It's going to be interesting. I wouldn't like to predict anything really.
Yeah, I have heard some predictions that they think that some of this money will be spent in acquiring content and event companies themselves. I also do think that, and that groups like yours will be a great resource for them because they have to move very fast, and you have the black book in the events industry. So if this is the skill set to draw from, I think that could be encouraging. I was at Web Summit about a year and a half before COVID. And I remember one of the questions to the audience, and they said there was 60 or 70,000 people in that auditorium, was how many people are using Slack? And it had to have been 60 or 70% of that audience. Tools like that, and I didn't want to mention any specifically, but we're already happening. All the project management software. There's a great book called Remote that was written before 4 or 5 years before pandemic. It was written by the founder of Basecamp, and it talks about all the reasons that remote can kind of move these productivity gains and forward, but also the disadvantages of remote as well and how to work around them. But this all does tie together. The skill set is available. The skill set is now globally accessible, and the events industry is a great source. So last question, what do you think are sort of key factors that are more important now than ever before for candidates that might be considering their next career move?
We've touched on a lot of this already, I think, but the key, one of the things I kind of want to shout out to all my clients is about really look after your staff at the moment. Don't take for granted that just because you've managed to keep them employed, that they are necessarily happy. There is a lot of people who perhaps feel like they should stay where they are because it's the safe option at the moment. Having said that, there is some incredible vacancies coming up. You can see them every day. New jobs are coming up, and it won't just be those individuals who have been made redundant applying for these roles. It's going to be people who are still employed because they will be reflecting on the last 12 months, looking at how their employer has looked after them, how they felt throughout that process. And again, all the other things that we spoke about today, of employee attraction. What are they doing for diversity? Are they offering remote working from home? What are their what's the framework and the plan around the sustainability? Those are the three key areas, to be honest, that I think candidates are looking at. But I just don't want clients to become complacent with their current teams, because it's not a given that they are going to stay, because there are so many temptations out there at the moment, and we really need to be looking after our current staff and really treating them well, so that they can see the benefits of staying with that company. So yeah, I would say those are the three key factors that candidates are looking for at the moment. But let's not forget our current employees and make sure we really look after them, retain that talent as much as we can.
Great. Well, Mike and Natasha, you both are such a wealth of information and connections in this area. And I've really admired how you've been there to help people during this time as well. It's very obvious. But so how can the listeners get a hold of you? How can they find out more about ExpoCast?
So we've got a website. Unsurprisingly, it's www.expocast.co.uk. But we're both fairly sort of prominent and frequent users of LinkedIn. So just search for either of us, and we'll pop up. All of our contact details are there. So yeah, we're always always happy to be reached out to. And yeah, we both got young families, so you know we're flexible workers ourselves. So yeah, reach out and we'll be back to you as soon as we possibly can.
Fantastic. Well, here's to you know, a brightening future here and coming back stronger than ever, and this new virtualization skill set being really in demand from the industry. So thank you both for your time today.
Thank you, RD.
Thanks so much, RD.
Have a great day.
Cheers.